Once upon a time, there was no life, there was no light, there was nothing, nothing but darkness and a great void. Out of this vast void came the heavens and an unformed earth, and primordial deities who claimed the magnificent heavens as their abode. Seeing the untouched empty form of the earth, two of the primordial beings, Izanagi and his twin sister, Izanami, went forth to design the dull formless realm as they pleased. Standing on the pillars of the high heavens, and churning the primordial sea with the heavenly spear of jewels, they created the islands, the mountains and forests of Japan. Seeing how well they complemented each other, Izanagi and Izanami united in marriage to procreate and populate the world with godly offspring. However, during the marriage ritual, their union was improperly sealed, because Izanami affirmed first. Some say because she was a woman, some say because she was the younger twin, so she should not have spoken first, they say. Thus, the children brought forth from that union were deformed in one way or another. Casting the deformed children away, Izanagi and Izanami performed the marriage rites all over again, with Izanagi affirming first, properly sealing the marriage this time, and allowing the couple to give rise to a healthy generation of kami afterwards. Their marriage was a happy one, but it was short-lived. Alas! Izanami met her death while giving birth to the god of fire, Kagutsuchi. The painful flames so consumed her body that she was burnt beyond regeneration. But before Izanami succumbed to death, she bore the water goddess, Mizuhami, with her last strength, instructing her to subdue her fiery brother whenever he became violent. With this, she passed on, and her soul traveled to the underworld, which would then become her new home. Devastated by the death of his wife, Izanagi beheaded his fiery son with his sword, cutting him up into 8 pieces, and scattering the pieces across the world. The 8 pieces became 8 volcanoes, and the blood that dripped from his sword gave rise to a number of elemental gods and monsters alike. Then Izanagi descended to the underworld in search of his wife. He would bring her back, so he thought. But when he beheld Izanami, she had become nothing more than a ghastly-looking rotten corpse, infested with many demons that freely went in and out of her body. She had eaten the food of the underworld, and so became like them, an undead, a demon. The demons that went in and out of her body were supposed to be celestial beings, glorious and beautiful. They were her unborn children. But because she had eaten the food of Yomi, because she had become a demon, and Oni, her unborn children, became demons too, dark and horrifying, waiting to be summoned. The hideous sight terrified Izanagi, and he begged the keepers of the underworld to give his wife another chance, to let him take her back to her realm, the realm of celestials. The keepers of Yomi agreed to his incessant pleas, but warned him not to look back at Izanami till they got to the entrance of the living world, where the gloomy darkness of the underworld fades into brilliant light. Izanagi promised to do as instructed. On their way, however, he soon forgot the warnings in his impatience, turning back to look at his wife, thereby condemning her to forever remain in her ghastly state. Now furious at her husband for failing his promise, Izanami sent her horde of demons after him to devour his soul, to equally imprison him in the underworld forever, and then go forth to devour the land of the living, inflicting suffering and rot upon every realm. They chased Izanagi to every nook and cranny of the underworld, even to the exit and the entrance to the realm of the living. The demons angrily pursued him. Luckily, Izanagi managed to roll the gates of the underworld shut, just in time to trap the angry demons, and save himself, as well as the other realms, from a grim fate. A narrow escape indeed, it was. More furious now, at the anguish she was left to suffer alone in the underworld, Izanami cursed the world, vowing she would kill 1,000 people each day. "Your words are frail, your promises are a lie. In light and happiness I once revelled, now they are gone and shall never be nigh. In splendor and glory the gods thrive, as I wallow and rot in eternal night. Hear me now, the world be damned. See what it feels like, this fate of mine. Neither from pain or suffering can they hide. Each day that rises, 1,000 will die.
How dark you have become, it saddens me more. Death may strike, and high may be the scores. Each day that comes, many shall be born, 1,000 new lives, and 500 more.
Izanagi countered her curse by vowing that 1,500 people would be born each day. And so it was. As Izanami kept her word every day, so did Izanagi. As thousands of people died each day, so were thousands born. Thus, Izanagi was able to protect and keep the land of the living from being annihilated. To cleanse himself of the impurities encountered in his horrible journey, Izanagi washed himself in the heavenly spring of purification. As the water cleansed his left eye, a goddess more beautiful and brighter than anything in the universe was born. This was Amaterasu, the goddess of the bright sun. As the water washed his right eye, a god so pale and lovely emerged. This was Tsukiyomi, the radiant god of the moon. And as the water cleaned his nose, an angry god sprang out, with waves splashing and storms thrashing. This was Susanoo, the impetuous god of the storms. These three new gods became the greatest of all Izanagi's children, and he gave them dominion over different parts of the heavens, relegating most of his powers and authority as the supreme ruler of the heavens to his daughter, Amaterasu. Amaterasu Omi Kami, the imperial great goddess, the ruler of the high heavens, the shining goddess of the sun. She, from whom the Japanese imperial family claims descent, a most revered deity of the Shinto religion, she who was born from the left eye of her father, Izanagi. At the birth of Amaterasu, Izanagi bestowed upon her a necklace of jewels, and gave her dominion over the celestial plane, over the high heavens, the abode of all the kami, the home of all the gods. She is the sister and wife to the moon god, Tsukuyomi, as well as the sister to the storm god, Susanoo. Once upon a time, Izanagi shared to his godly descendants roles and positions in the celestial realm, relegating his powers and authority to the shining Amaterasu. With all the kami fulfilling their various roles as tradition demands, the celestial realm was supposed to be a place of law and order, of peace and serenity. Is that not right? But it wasn't. Why? Susanoo. Susanoo was by nature a stormy god, a violent kami, the spirit of the angry clouds. The heavens knew no calm as long as Susanoo was present. For not knowing why he did so, he brought only turmoil in his wake. He disrupted the peace and calm of the heavens whenever he had the chance, throwing a tantrum at the slightest provocation, only to become sober after much destruction had been done. It was not because he took delight in his deeds. Susanoo only manifested what he was, the raging storm. He was in constant rivalry with Amaterasu, and one day challenged the sun goddess to a contest of who could create the most kami, a contest of who could bring forth the most creations.
All this peace and calm is depressing. What say you for a brawl against the mighty Susanoo, O Queen of the Heavens?
Oh brother, are you not aware how futile your powers are against me? Have you not learned anything? Your strength will do you no good, and your wits are sorely lacking. But, very well, a contest you shall have.
Taking Susanoo's sword, Amaterasu bit into the sword, and spat out its pieces, and out of the pieces sprang 3 gods, some say 3 women. Now taking Amaterasu's necklace, Susanoo bit into the jewel, and also spat out its pieces, and out of the pieces sprang 5 gods, some say 5 men. Susanoo had brought forth more creations than the Queen of the Heavens, thus, he should be the winner of the contest, shouldn't he? But no. It was all part of Amaterasu's clever tactics. Amaterasu reminded the gods that the necklace, which had brought forth the 5 new deities, belonged to her. Standing atop her throne, she declared that because the necklace was her property, everything that came out of it was hers as well. Thus, the 5 deities, born from her necklace, belonged to her, and the 3 deities, born from Susanoo's sword, belonged to Susanoo. The other gods found no flaw in her reasoning, and pronounced Amaterasu the winner of the contest. But at this moment, the winds blew strong, the skies grew dark, and the storms came forth. Susanoo had flown into rage again. He dashed to Amaterasu's rice fields, and destroyed all the crops. He killed her horse, and flayed the poor animal, throwing the body at one of her handmaidens, and killing the handmaiden in the process.
Such impetus! I shall not stand for this madness.
Appalled by the height of Susanoo's uncivil behavior, Amaterasu left the heavens, and withdrew deep into the caves, where her light could no longer reach the world. But without the sun goddess's light, darkness descended upon the world of gods and men. Everything began to suffer, plants and trees withered and died, men and animals began to ail, the heavens had no light and no joy, the entire universe was in perpetual darkness, like it once was in the beginning. The Celestials desperately sought their queen, the earth cried out for her return. Oh, how indispensable she was! Journeying to the cave, which the sun goddess had withdrawn into, the 800 gods of the celestial plane pleaded for her return. But Amaterasu would not listen. What could they do now? Once upon a time, Amaterasu, the sun goddess, exiled herself into the heavenly rock caves, withdrawing her light, that the world was plunged into a long, long night. The other gods tried to lure her out, all to no avail. And when the predicament of the universe grew worse every day that went by, without the light of the sun, the heavens were at a loss for what to do. The sun could not be replaced, so how could they make Amaterasu change her mind? Who could make her bring back her light to the world? Well, who could? If not Uzume, the dancing goddess. Known as Ame-no-Uzume, the great persuader, and the heavenly alarming female, she is the goddess of dawn, mirth, revelry, the arts, and sexual pleasure, in the Shinto religion of Japan.
Ah. Another pandemonium. Well, nothing a little swing of the hips won't settle.
When the clever Uzume was called into action, she pulled off a brilliant trick, for that was what she was known for. She overturned a tub near the cave entrance, and began to dance on it, tearing her clothes with every step she took, partially disrobing herself as she danced her way through. This so delighted all the other gods that they roared with laughter. There was never a dull moment with Uzume. She had also brought a huge bronze mirror and a beautiful jewel of polished jade, placing the mirror in front of the cave as part of her plan to lure the sun goddess out, then dancing to the mouth of the cave with the other gods still roaring and cheering behind her. Curious, As to why the gods were this happy and excited, Amaterasu could not help but call out to the dancing goddess from deep inside the caves, asking what in the world was going on. Why was there this much merriment when there was no sunlight in the world? Uzume simply replied that they had found a deity brighter than her, fairer than her, more glorious and more illustrious than her. She asked the sun goddess to come see for herself, to come behold the new fairest of all the gods. Amaterasu, again unable to help her curiosity, slowly drew out of the caves towards the entrance to see who this new goddess was. Truly, when Amaterasu peeked outside, she saw a goddess more glorious than anything she had ever seen. What she didn't know was that this goddess was merely her own reflection in some mirror, the very mirror Uzume had placed in front of the cave. In awe of this magnificent being in front of her, the sun goddess fully came out of the cave, going closer to the mirror in order to get a better view. Just when she realized that she was looking at her own self, her own reflection, the other gods quickly shut the cave with a giant boulder, with one of them placing a magical barrier on the rock so she wouldn't go back in. Amaterasu did not object, for she was no longer angry now. And when they asked her to join them in the dance, the sun goddess happily obliged. Thus, sunlight was restored upon the lands. Uzume, the dancing goddess, had done it. Susanoo, the impetuous highness, the Japanese god of storms, the god of the oceans and seas. Born from the nose of Izanagi, he holds dominion over the many spirits of the oceans, storms, and winds. A powerful kami, whose moods are as temperamental as his actions are chaotic. A riotous deity, whose flaring anger and tattered appearance simply reflect his status as the god of dreadful storms. Susanoo's shrines are located at the sea surrounding South Japan, and like the one who dwells within, this sea very well reflects his attributes: stormy, dark, raging. Susanoo is sometimes malevolent and sometimes benevolent, and so are the many sea and storm gods who serve under him. Despite his immorality, he remains one of Japanese mythology's most celebrated heroes. He fought and slew the fearsome 8-headed dragon, Orochi, killing it with his famed 10-span sword, the Kusanagi-no-Tsurugi. This became his greatest feat, a feat done as penance to atone for his catastrophic tendencies. It was a quest to restore his honor. Once upon a time, Susanoo's rash actions led to the disappearance of the sun goddess, Amaterasu, plunging the world into eerie darkness. Trial after trial, the gods failed to bring back their queen, until Uzume, the dancing goddess, stepped in and saved the day, and light and joy was restored on the lands, for the sun goddess had returned. But Susanoo needed to be taught a lesson, to be punished, to ensure such a disaster never happened again. And this, Izanagi, the heavenly grandfather, did. Izanagi banished him from the high heavens, and cast him down to the earth, into the deepest seas, to live in solitude, far away from the gods, for no one could stand such a being. There, in his watery abyss, he could forever display his temperament however he wished. In regret, Susanoo wandered the earth and seas, in search of what or who else he could find, in this new realm. By that time, humans, and the lesser gods of the earth, had begun to sprout from the lands and mountains, created by Izanagi and Izanami. He saw that these humans were so much like the kami, yet so different. They were weaker, much weaker than the gods. They ailed, grew old and died, whereas the gods of the high did not. They were mortal beings. Susanoo found a chopstick floating in the river one day, following it to see who lived nearby. He came across a small village, and all he could hear was people crying. Entering the village, he met an elderly couple, with a beautiful maiden by their side, sobbing, weeping. He asked why they were all sad, and the elderly couple told him their story. They originally had 8 daughters, 8 princesses. Each year, an evil serpent came and devoured one. And the maiden beside them, Princess Kusanada, was the last of their daughters. Now it was time for the serpent to come again, to feed again, and that is why they all cry. When Susanoo asked of this serpent, they told him about Orochi, the 8-headed dragon. A beast like no other, this creature was. With eyes that glowed red, it had 8 heads and 8 tails, and with a belly that glowed hot with the fire of its breath. Its body was as long as 8 valleys and 8 hills. Who could deny such a beast? Enchanted by the beauty of Princess Kusanada, and in a quest to atone for his crimes, Susanoo offered to soothe their grief, to do some good, for the first time in his long immortal life, but with a condition. He would slay the monster in exchange for the princess's hand in marriage. The elderly couple readily agreed, so they quickly devised a plan to defeat the dragon. Turning the princess into a close-toothed comb, Susanoo stuck the comb in his long hair to protect her while they worked their plan. They brewed a large quantity of sake, an enormous quantity of strong liquor. Then they built 8 gates, placing a pot of the strong liquor at the entrance of each gate. He would see if this creature was as wise as it was huge. He would get it drunk with sake, then hack it to death. This was the plan of the impetuous god. The gigantic 8-headed dragon soon arrived as anticipated, and easily falling for Susanoo's trick, it drank all the pots of sake, laying down to sleep, for it had become intoxicated. Trapping the dragon's heads beneath the gates, Susanoo cut off its heads before it had the chance to recover. As he severed the 8 tails from its body, he struck something very hard. And pulling the object out, behold, it was a magnificent sword. This was the Kusanagi-no-Tsurugi, the holy sword of Japanese mythology. Susanoo married Princess Kusanada afterwards, and having repented from his uncivil ways, he offered the Kusanagi-no-Tsurugi to his sister, Amaterasu, as a sign of apology. Amaterasu accepted his gift, and allowed him to return to the heavens if he wished. However, Susanoo decided to stay in his watery kingdom, to stay with his new wife, in the land that would one day be called Izumo. The Kusanagi-no-Tsurugi is a sacred sword in Japanese mythology and one of the 3 imperial regalia of Japan. The 3 imperial regalia are the 3 treasures of Japan, namely, the mirror and the jewel, which brought back the sun, and the sword which came from the dragon. The sword, representing valor, the mirror, representing wisdom, and the jewel, representing benevolence. Tsukuyomi, god of the moon, god of the night, the moon-reading man, the night watcher. A proud and fierce god, he was born from the right eye of Izanagi, as he washed himself in the river of purification. Thus, he is the brother to the sun goddess, Amaterasu, and the storm god, Susanoo. Also the consort to Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi's beauty equally matched that of the sun goddess. While she was the light, he was the dark. They both believed in law and order, however, they enforced it in different ways. While Amaterasu was kind and considerate, in judgment, Tsukuyomi was cruel and violent. He believed mercy was a sign of weakness and dealt ruthlessly with anything he deemed inappropriate. In order to maintain a law, he was willing to break it. This would lead him to commit the sacrilege of murdering a fellow god and his separation with Amaterasu. Once upon a time, appearing side by side in the far skies, the sun and the moon always did shine at the same time, illuminating all that was in the heavens and below. Wherever Amaterasu was found, Tsukuyomi was also found. There was no such thing as night or darkness, there was only light, there was only day. One day, Amaterasu, along with the other gods of the high, were invited to a feast by the goddess of food and plenty, Uzume. Uzume was a half-deity who brought about all the edible things known to mankind today. Every single substance that came out of her body became food. Now, having other matters to attend to, Amaterasu could not make it to the feast, and so sent Tsukuyomi in her place. Tsukuyomi was welcomed by the goddess upon his arrival. However, what came next gave him an unforgettable eyesore. Facing the land, Uzume vomited from her mouth boiled rice. Turning to the sea, she coughed into the waters, and her sputum became all sorts of fishes. And facing the forest, she vomited again, and it turned to assorted dishes of finely cooked meat and game. Although the meals looked tasty and sumptuous, Tsukuyomi could not hide his disgust in the manner the meals came about. At least, the eyesore was over now, the moon god thought with relief. Just then, Uzume began to spew food from her body once again, out of her ears, out of her nose, out of her mouth, out of every hole in her body. She pulled out different kinds of fruits and vegetables. But Tsukuyomi had had enough. Unable to contain his disgust any longer, the moon god drew his sword and cut off Uzume's head. When he told his wife what he had done, the sun goddess fumed with anger, refusing to ever look at him again. She cast him away from her sight, to another part of the heavens, never to be seen by her side, thenceforth. He would become the dark, and she, the light. He would become the night, and she, the day. Forever longing for what they once had, to the very end of days. This is the story of how day and night came to be. Now, even from her lifeless corpse, Uzume's body still produced food. From her head came the ox and the horse. From her forehead came millet. From her eyebrows came silkworms. From her eyes came panic grass. From her belly came rice, and from her genitals came wheat and beans. Amaterasu commanded that the food grains be sown, so humanity would never lack. Placing the silkworms in her mouth, she drew silk threads from them, thus gifting mankind the art of raw silk production. Raijin, the Lord Thunder, the resounding one, Raiden Summer. Born from the rotten corpse of Izanami, Raijin is the god of lightning and thunder. A being of death, and yet a being of life, a being of destruction, and yet a being of protection. His rain and thunder brought disastrous typhoons and storms, yet the water gave life to all that lived and walked the earth. His lightning destroyed anything that was in its path, yet when it touched a crop, harvest would be abundant and plentiful. He was the bringer of rain, a blessing to farmers, and whenever drought came, they say Raijin was sleeping, the drought would disappear when he awakes. With a big muscular build, and a terrifying gaze, Raijin was an intimidating kami. With long sharp fangs, and a gravity-defying hair, he resembled a demon. This was a reminder of his unnatural birth, his birth in the underworld. He was born a demon. On each of his hands are only 3 fingers, representing the past, the present, and the future. Once upon a time, Izanami was burnt to death as she gave birth to the fire god, Kagutsuchi, and so descended into the land of Yomi, into the land of the dead. She was still pregnant at the time of her death, and thus carried her unborn children with her, unharmed, as her soul traveled to the underworld. Alas! Before her husband Izanagi could bring her back from the underworld, Izanami ate the food of Yomi, and drank the drink of the dead, becoming a demon. And as she became a demon, so did her unborn children, the many gods inside her divine belly. Izanagi arrived to rescue his wife from the gloomy realm, only to see the horrifying sinister-looking creature she had become, so he ran away. There, Izanami felt betrayed. He had abandoned her. In her anger, she summoned all her children, and out of her rotten corpse emerged the terrifying Raijin, and the ghastly Fujin, and many other demons and oni that would dominate the underworld. They had a single purpose: to carry out their mother's wish, to bring unending suffering and calamity to the world of the living. Shutting the gates of Yomi, Izanagi escaped the underworld, trapping the host of demons behind him. Unfortunately, before the gates could roll shut, Raijin and Fujin slipped through, bringing with them death and destruction. Flying across the sky, Raijin threw death-dealing lightning at unwary passers-by. Calling down rain, he would cause typhoons and rainstorms. And hiding in the dark clouds, he would prey on children who did not hide their belly buttons.
Behold the fiends you fear the most. Lightning and thunder I create with the pounding of my drums. The skies are mine to rule, the battlefields I dominate.
Japanese parents would warn their children to always cover their belly buttons, else, if Raijin saw it, he would swallow them up, for their belly buttons reminded him of his cursed birth in the land of the dead, and fuels his envy of natural-born humans. Raijin wreaked so much destruction in Japan that the emperors began to seek a way to imprison him. But of course, the mortals were nowhere a match for this powerful demon. Thus, the emperors sent a god hunter, named Tsugaru, to hunt him down.
Fool! The earth trembles at the mere sound of my laughter, my thunder claps as resounding as a blasting cannon. I shatter everything that lays in my path. You're useless, nothing can stop me.
Upon their first encounter, Tsugaru realized in no time that Raijin was a much more powerful opponent, and so invoked the Buddha of Compassion, named Kannon, who compelled Raijin into submission, and showed him the error of his ways. Raijin was taken to the emperor's palace, where he swore to serve Japan thenceforth, not destroy it. There, Raijin became a protector, and no more a bringer of death. No more would he throw his lightning at the natives, no more would he gobble up little children. With his rains, he would bring life and growth. The crops shall yield and the fields thrive. And with his thunderstorms, he would fight the enemies. Their vessels shall shatter and their armies scatter, for Raijin watches over the lands. In 1274, a warlord named Kublai Khan tried to invade Japan. As his Mongols stepped onto the shores, a great typhoon descended from the skies and disassembled his army, making them retreat in fear. After they recovered in 1281, they made another attempt to invade Japan, and as they once again stepped onto the shores of the country, this same great typhoon blew them away with a fury so strong that the Mongols never returned to Japan again. To the outside world, what happened to the Mongols was just an unusual but natural phenomenon, a mere coincidence. they will say. But to the people of Japan, it was Raijin, their sworn protector. Raijin, the defender of the people. It had to be. Nothing else could have done that, with such perfect timing. They say Raijin takes a human form, whenever he walks among his people. He takes the form of a man called Raiden, wearing a simple robe and a straw hat. On his right hand is his son, Raitaro, heir of thunder. On his left hand is his brother, Fujin, god of the winds. And upon a thunder beast called Raiju, he rides. Together, they are the protectors of Japan. They say the demons that populate the underworld, and even the world of men, all came from Izanami, the former queen of the heavens, and now mother of the dead. When Raijin emerged from her decaying corpse, Fujin followed closely. When Raijin escaped into the realm of men, Fujin was right beside him. While Raijin poured down the heavy rains, Fujin gathered the gloomy clouds. While Raijin brought forth the terrifying thunder and lightning, Fujin blew forth the swirling winds and breezes. God of the wild winds and subtle breezes, Fujin was a red-headed demon, a green-skinned ogre, carrying on his shoulders a large bag, which contained all the winds of the world. The brothers constantly dueled each other in a friendly combat, to determine who ruled the skies, who dominated the most. Whenever they began their mock battles, mankind would shudder and hide in fear at the chaos, the merciless thunderstorms and devastating tornadoes they caused. But to the demon brothers, their scuffle in the skies was simply fun, entertaining, just a good way to pass time. When they first entered the world of the living, they caused nothing but suffering and disasters. After all, that was the reason they were sent. Raijin, throwing his lightning at unsuspecting humans, and Fujin, knocking down the trees upon them. But as Raijin transitioned from an evil Oni to a protector god, Fujin emulated his brother and equally turned away from his evil ways, assisting in protecting the land of Japan. When the Mongols invaded Japan in 1274 and 1281, they say Raijin did not fight the invaders alone, for somewhere in the shadows was Fujin, aiding his brother. Raijin, pouring down the rains, the lightning and thunder, and Fujin, summoning the powerful winds that made that typhoon as menacing as it was.
Two sides of a coin, brothers till the end. The lightning and the cloud, the thunder and the storm. The rain and the wind, Raijin and Fujin.